The upcoming holidays that we have are Ramadan, which is the holy month of Ramadan, and fasting in Islam is coming up March 22nd to April 21st. And Easter will be on April 9th. Passover will be from April 11th to April 13th. And I will just quickly go through our agenda for this evening. We have our traditional getting to know you exercise, the introduction of our speaker this evening, Val Zavala, and her presentation, our interfaith blessing followed by our potluck dinner, questions and answers with our guest speaker, and our final announcements and closing. So thank you again for coming, and we look forward to a wonderful evening. John Hyde is coming next to begin our game.
Okay. So, what am I thinking?
Well, thank you very much, Jane.
Oh, where are you?
I would like to, again, thank you for coming tonight. I think we're going to have a wonderful presentation on something that's all important to all of us. And I'm really particularly pleased that you all came in person. We've been doing this Zoom thing for so long that everyone is really focused on Zoom still, and to get them to leave their homes and come here is asking an inordinate request on their part. So thank you very much for coming. Now, the whole thing about interfaith is good topics, but more importantly, it's getting to know one another. So at this beginning of our meeting, what we're going to do is do one of our exercises. First, I'd like everyone to please stand and to gaze over the wonderful people that left their TVs tonight and the game, and to see the wonderful people that you're with tonight. And check out somebody that you have never met before. Okay? Focus on
I've never met you, Carl.
So here we are.
Yeah, how are you?
And now I would like you to go over and introduce yourself and tell them.
Say me a hi.
Are you meeting each other?
Yeah, I've never met him
okay.
before.
So can we sit down?
Could you?
Do haven't started.
Commercial news, I was a general assignment reporter, so it's covering spot news. You're covering stories that have to be turned very quickly, in a minute and a half, and you can do it, but you can't go in depth. That's a lot of chart on earth, but it's the best way to keep Santa Margarita safe. By far, the biggest jump in my career was going from commercial news to public television. LA Mayor Tom Bradley praised the special LAPD narcotics team today. The unit targets drug selling by gangs. At KCT, my first job was to be a reporter for a little news cut-in that they had right after the news hour called 7:30, and later it was called Newsline. And we did short pieces, 2-3 minute pieces that fit into that 5-minute section of 7:25, 7:30. And so we did local stories every night, our little contribution. It's easy enough to make your own greenhouse effect. Just get in the car on a warm day, roll up the window, and wait a few minutes. Our show. Half-hour public affairs show. Los Angeles, 2001. Anyway, you get the idea. So we did all sorts of things, and it was really wonderful. A lot of local production. Let's see here. Next, do I just click on it?
Yeah.
So, in a way, our lives, and we grew up with television. And although I was born in 1955, I'm sure some of you remember 1940s when TVs first came out. They had the spindly legs. Let's see, did I click on it? TV in 1950, only 9% of American homes had a TV set. Only 9%. Can you imagine that? Black and white to color, that occurred in 1965, and we all remember that wonderful scene in The Wizard of Oz where everything turns color. At that time, rooftop antennas were pretty much the only way that we received our TV signal.
That's right.
And we all remember the dad getting up on top of the roof and the mom yelling, "No, no, no,
this way, that way, no, there's a little bit of that, and then it would get fuzzy and staticky, and then it would come into focus, or the picture would appear, and everybody would applause. Yeah, that's it, Dad, that's it. I'm sure many a hospital had broken legs and ankles from Dad being on top of the house. We had, remote controls. Remember when they came in? That was a big deal. Things were happening fast. And at that time, there were really just 3 major commercial stations: NBC, ABC, CBS. Only 3, pretty much it. And maybe an independent station here and there. And of course, public broadcasting, which was established in the mid-1960s. By an act of Congress. And by the way, the reason why we have pledge shows is that the act of Congress did not include any kind of regular public financial support. So they said, okay, we're going to start public television, we'll give it some money, but it has to go out and raise a lot of its own. Unlike in Britain, where public television, the BBC, is supported by a tax on the sale of every TV, and financial problem solved, but not here. So it's unfortunate. That's one of the reasons BBC is so strong. One of the reasons. There were 3 TV news sources at the time: Cronkite, Frank Reynolds, Huntley Brinkley. Probably remember them. They were great. Of course, they were all white men, but they were solid. And about this time is when my folks, just a little bit of autobiography, my dad was from Mexico, my mother is from Wisconsin, little town. They met in Chicago, and they got married right after the war. Typical story, that's them. And they headed out to Riverside, because Chicago was too dang cold for my dad and my mom. And so they came out, and they had 5 kids. These are 4 of them. There was still yet one more to come. That's me in there in the middle. We lived at Riverside, moved around a lot. And moved to Riverside, then Calexico, El Centro, and eventually I pretty much settled in Chula Vista, if you know where that is, south of San Diego. And I went to junior high and high school there. And was always a really, I love school. I just loved school, and it was great. And public schools were really good at that time, at least where we were. And so it was a wonderful time to grow up. It's me in various stages of my life. Right here is my high school picture, grad school, and then I started reporting. And I went to graduate school at American University in Washington, D.C., when journalism schools were really just beginning. Watergate glamorized, I shouldn't say glamorized, Watergate made journalism the coolest thing you could do. Because look what these 2, Washington Post reporters did. So journalism programs started blossoming all over. I went, and so they were beginning, a lot more were beginning to get started, but they're nothing like they are today. I mean, journalism schools today, you go to USC, or the studios are incredible. The cameras, the editing equipment, it's phenomenal what they have. We were lucky if we just had a little tape recorder. But I did nevertheless go to American University for their journalism program, and they had a writing award, which they gave, and I was the winner, and I got to go to New York, and I met in 1980 Walter Cronkite, because it was an award that he and his colleagues kind of sponsored. So that was my first encounter with Walter Cronkite. I'd have 2 more before my career ends. He was just the most gracious man in the world, and we went out for dinner afterwards. You can imagine how nervous I was. I was like, in this crowd of all these incredible news guys. And they, after the awards, went out to some steakhouse or something with these big red booths, and I'm like, oh my God, what fork do I use? But he was so lovely. He's, no, you gotta sit right next to me, come on, right here. He was just lovely. So anyway, cable TV comes along. And of course, people said, wait a minute, there's no way Americans are going to pay for something that they can get for free. You can get TV for free over the air. Well, never underestimate the American society's willingness to pay for entertainment. So in 1969, there were 3.6 million cable households. By 1985, 41 million. Cable was king there for a while. And of course, along with cable, almost endless channels, because you can put a gazillion channels into a cable connection. But don't let cable get too cozy here, because enter satellite. Satellite gave cable some competition. That was in the 1990s. Look how fast things are changing. And so satellite, what did I do? Can you hear me? Came along, and lo and behold, why did I all of a sudden don't sound like I hear myself? Yet more and more, seems like something went out, but maybe not. More and more channels. And then we get the streaming devices, Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, Chromecast, all of these. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
And it just proliferates and proliferates. And of course, every one of these channels have to have content. So suddenly, content, we need more, we need more, we need more. For better and for worse. Where are we? Now, about this time, in the 1990s, KCT started a program called Life and Times. It was a nightly newscast. And Warren Olney was on the radio, but he did have one afternoon free where he would come over from Santa Monica, drive over to Hollywood where his studio was, and we would tape, I think we taped 2 or 3 shows in one day. Maybe he came twice. And so he was terrific. And then after him, then he said, oh, I got to concentrate on radio, and the drive's too long. So then Jess Marlowe had retired from commercial, so he came over, and for a couple of years, he was my co-anchor. Both of these men are just consummate professionals and the most lovely human beings. I was so honored to work with both of them. After Life and Times went away in 2007, we started a local program called SoCal Connected, which also lasted for quite a long time. And that was more of a news magazine. We were out in the field covering all sorts of things. That's where we did features and serious stuff, and it was just terrific. And we had a great team of reporters and camera people and editors. And I would really call Life and Times and SoCal Connected, in my heart, kind of the golden era of KCT local news production. Now, right around here, I don't know if you guys remember that time when everybody had to get rid of their cable box and get a new one, and people were really confused. And that's because the FCC had converted the television signals from analog to digital. And it was very confusing, and we finally got through it, but it was the best thing possible because the electromagnetic spectrum, which carries TV signals, has only limited space. And by condensing and by digitizing all the TV signals, it opened up a whole section of the electromagnetic spectrum available for satellite, military, all sorts of other needs. And we got through it. So that was another conversion that everyone went through. Now, once we have digital, and we have cable, or satellite, and now internet, digital subscription channels started coming up, and now you're seeing yet another huge explosion of content. Then the web gets involved with social media and content as well, and it's almost a tidal wave. It's almost too much. And in the meantime, of course, it affects how we get our news. So this actually is a little bit old, so it might even be more pronounced than this. But we, as one poll showed, phones, computers, and tablets, 86% of Americans get their news, sometimes or often, from phones, computers, and tablets. 68%, it's probably a little lower now, maybe 62, I'm going to guess, because of the age of this survey. Sometimes or often get their news from TV. 50% sometimes or often get their news from radio. I still get my news a lot from radio. I just put, NPR on in the car a lot. And print newspapers is probably lower than that, but that is still hanging in there, sort of. Digital news sources. Of the digital news sources, websites or apps, 68%, probably higher now. Search engines, when you use whatever Yahoo dishes out to you, or which I don't trust, I wouldn't do that. I still like to subscribe to the newspaper emails with, the digital version of newspapers. I don't like a curator between me and my news. And social media, 53% is a source, probably more now. And podcasts, I'm sure it's higher now, but at that time it was 22%. But news websites, generally top, search engines, social media, podcasts are all in the digital realm and obviously command more and more of people's time and consumption of news. And in the meantime, newspapers are declining. 2,200 local papers folded in 2005. Ooh, this is old. I got to update that. It has not gotten better, I'm sorry to say. Newspaper journalists, the number of newspaper journalists have dropped by half. I don't know, I should again get a year there. 2/3 of all the counties in the U.S. have no daily paper. And let me tell you why papers are important. And the truth is that papers are the folks with the boots on the ground. And many, many times, a newspaper reporter only you send him or her out and it doesn't cost a lot. You don't have an expensive sound guy, camera guy, expensive equipment, mic. You could just, send them out there with their tape recorder or their pencil and pen, and they can sit there for the whole city council meeting waiting for the boring parts so they can get to the news. And so that's why the newspapers would often have more in-depth and more complete coverage. And what's the first thing that every television station looked at in the morning? The newspapers. So the newspapers were, in a sense, the raw material that a lot of TV stations drew from every day. It was not unusual for me when I worked for commercial news, you go in the morning and the assignment desk says, here, go do the story, and they give you basically a newspaper article. So newspapers are so important. They are the foundation for a lot of good reporting, and unfortunately, once that foundation starts eroding, and it has eroded very, very quickly, things decline overall, affects everybody. And 2016, really, that's kind of the time. Actually, that was the election when really fake news and rise of fake news started emerging, because it coincided with the explosion in digital websites and the ability of almost anybody to have a website. So you get stuff like this. Pope Francis just backed Trump, released incredible statement, spread this everywhere. Yeah, right. Trump is getting support from every leader, including the Pope. I doubt that, but what are you going to do? People believe this stuff. Trudeau promises Canadian citizens a wall, and the U.S. will pay for it. I don't think so. Now, technology and fake news, it is frightening how good it can be and how convincing it can be. And again, I'm going to see if this will start. I think this is a little tricky. Oh, I see. You know what this is? We might have to sit through a little commercial.
With Fidelity Income Planning, a dedicated advisor.
I'm sorry about that. I'll mute it at least. And then once it gets, I should try to get this embedded, but it's a little tricky. Video will play after that. Okay.
President Obama taking on fake news, except turns out it is not really President Obama in this PSA. This is a clear example of technology that could become more widely used. And ABC's David Wright is here with more data. This video is proof that we
Can you hear that?
everything that we see online.
That is right, Paula. Good morning. They say that the camera never lies, but technology is advancing so fast that it can lie with greater and greater effectiveness. That's the point of this new video from Jordan Peele.
Our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time.
Former President Barack Obama, right?
So, for instance, they could have me say things like, Killmonger was right.
Wrong.
See, I would never say these things, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele.
Comedian Jordan Peele actually produced this video to warn about the future of fake news. The technology uses sophisticated artificial intelligence tools able to turn familiar faces, even presidents, into puppets.
Now there is software that can be purchased and done at home, and within a few days you can manufacture what someone says in a video.
Most people use it for harmless fun, like inserting Nicolas Cage into movies where he doesn't belong. But it can be scary stuff. Recently, hackers took this image of Parkland High School senior Emma Gonzalez tearing up a gun range target for Teen Vogue. They manipulated it to come up with a clip that appeared to show her tearing up the Constitution instead. Just the sort of nefarious use Jordan Peele and BuzzFeed, which co-produced the video, is warning about.
Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet.
The message here that it's getting harder and harder to trust our eyes and ears.
Sure, it's hard to determine the veracity, so how
Okay, now, here's my question. Okay, I'll just not worry about it. No question I like. So that's what they can do, and that's actually kind of old, and they can do even better ones now. Okay, so that's the how, but why is it so pervasive? Because fake news, unfortunately, does pay off. Facebook is intentionally designed to addict users. They literally want you to be addicted to Facebook and other kind of media. And the CEOs will not admit to this, but privately they know it's true. Likes lead to more exposure, and that leads to ad revenue. That's another incentive for folks to do this. The creators of fake news make more money from more subscribers, and there's no overarching authority or seal of credibility, so there's no penalty for disseminating fake news. Also, lies are easy to create and hard to kill. So there's the case of Christopher Blair, about a 46-year-old father, and he was, I think he lived up in Vermont. And in 2016 election, he was interested to see just what people would believe. So he created a page, and it said Clinton is a serial killer, undocumented immigrants deface Mount Rushmore, Barack Obama dodged the Vietnam draft at age 8, and then he put on his Facebook page, nothing on this page is real. But nevertheless, Blair's page became one of the most popular on Facebook among Trump-supporting conservatives over 55. He said, share if you're ours. It was ridiculous. They didn't care. It was something to share. Why is that? Well, a lie has traveled halfway around the world before truth has a chance to put its pants on, as the saying goes. By the way, we don't know who said it, either Winston Churchill or Mark Twain or neither. There's just something about lies that if you are emotionally inclined to believe them and want them to be true, you just disseminate them, and the credibility. There's no filters in some of these folks' brains. And once you have the internet doing this, anybody doing anything, along with political and social polarization, the two reinforce each other. Sort of good news is the study found, at least this was back at the first, was it the first, I think, Trump campaign, is what I'm trying to say. The study found that saw no evidence that fake news swung the election, didn't change the election. Every American was exposed to fake news during the presidential election, but only 8% believed it. Mainly what fake news did is it confirmed your existing opinion. That's what some of these studies show. It did not influence swing voters. It just made the folks who were inclined to believe the fake news more adamant. Now, I don't know if that's true, because things have gotten even worse now. I think probably there's a little bit more persuasive power in fake news. So the questions remain. How can fake news be contained? Facebook, Twitter, and all those, oops, typo, sorry about that. You can close accounts if you want. A few people do that. Oh, I can't live without my Facebook. Facebook can add fact checkers, and they have, but it's almost impossible to keep up with the amount of material being posted. New algorithms send fake news to the bottom of the Facebook news feed. I don't know how that works, but they supposedly have that in place, at least a little bit. And of course, people say we need to get much tighter regulation. In Europe, there are much tighter regulations on the internet in general, and we don't. Ours is pretty loosey-goosey. So we can also offer more fact-checking locations. The best, I think, is Snopes.com. If you haven't used it, it's fantastic. If you come across something that just doesn't smell quite right, take the keywords, go to Snopes.com, put it in, it'll tell you right away. This is bull or this is true. Factcheck.org, also very good for public policy. PolitiFact, very good for political facts. So they are out there, but it takes an initiative. It takes a person to be skeptical, and then to be motivated to go to one of these sites and to check it. Of course, more public media, I would love to see, PBS, of course BBC is real strong, NHK, ARD is the German, public broadcasting. Most developed countries with press freedom have far more public media, including multiple government-funded broadcast news channels than we do. And of course, locally, my favorite was SoCal Connected, and we just had a wonderful run, and this was our team. They were a terrific group of people, absolutely lovely, fun people. We had one year especially, we got a lot of Emmys, so we got this fun group shot. And when I look at this whole declining quality of news landscape, and actually, even more than that, the very serious and troubling trends in our society, you kind of wonder, what would Walter Cronkite say about our society today? And I had a chance to interview him when he was alive. He'd just written a book. He was making a swing through various states, and I got to interview him. He was a lovely, lovely person, and I got to ask him a question. Let's see if I can do this. Oops. Ah, shoot, wait a minute. Nope, go back.
There you go.
I have trouble finding that bar, okay.
I remember doing an interview.
Can you hear?
Have you just written a book? And I asked him, you've seen the history of America going by your desk. What do you see as the future? He said,
Can you make it louder?
States will be
I don't know how to do it.
We are going to end up as one of the poorer of the modern nations in the world, particularly Western nations.
And I was shocked. I said, the United States an impoverished country?
He said we're going to end up being one of the more poorer and impoverished of the industrialized nations in the world.
Hit the volume icon. Investing in education, and this have-not divide will get only worse.
Right now, way behind in our education.
Up to the right? All right.
Here?
Yeah, just go up, just drag it. There you go.
Okay.
I remember doing an interview.
Sorry, it's repeating.
And I asked
A little better?
A little.
Yeah.
him the history
Can you raise it higher?
of desk. What do you
It's
see
an apple.
He said, the United States will be an impoverished country.
We are going to end up as one of the poorer of the modern nations in the world, particularly Western nations.
And I was shocked. I said, the United States an impoverished country? He said, yes. Because we're not investing in education, and this have-not divide will get only worse.
We are right now falling way behind in our education.
Don't know why it stopped.
Yep, that's it.
Oh, yes, that's right. So if you didn't hear him, he basically said, we're falling behind other countries because of our education. We're not investing in education, and that is the key to a strong society. And the have-not will get worse, our educational system will get worse, it will divide us. And so he said, that's the key to our future, and we're not investing in it. Let's see. Where am I? Right there. And I love this quote as I kind of wind up here. Civilization is in a race between education and catastrophe. Let us learn the truth and spread it as far and wide as our circumstances allow, for the truth is the greatest weapon we have. Education is the key to a functional, rational society. Now, I usually end here, but because you are the interfaith study group, I thought you would actually be interested to see some latest statistics from a very good survey that was just finished last month, a couple months ago maybe, by the Public Religion Research Institute and the Brookings Institute combined. It's a fascinating study. It was a poll survey. I'm taking just a few little excerpts from it, but you might enjoy going to their website. And it looks at the future of hate crimes, or not, I'm sorry, not the future of, it looks at, analyzes hate crimes, analyzes what motivates them, and so forth. So I thought I would put this in because I thought it applied to your group in particular. It found that hate crimes in 2021, this part's from the FBI. There were a total of 7,262 crimes with 9,000 victims. The motivation was first and foremost race, 65% of those hate crimes motivated by race, followed by sexual orientation, 20% of the hate crimes motivated by sexual orientation. Religion, 14% of those 7,262 hate crimes motivated by religion, and then 2% by disability. Of those crimes motivated by religion, which is the smaller part, right? But you look at, let's dig down in that, 32% anti-Jewish, 21% anti-Sikh, anti-Islamic 9.5%, anti-Eastern Orthodox 6.5%, anti-Catholic 6%. Interesting, it's still anti-Jewish is way up there, followed by anti-Sikh. One of the most dangerous trends I see in our society is Christian nationalism. And this is, among their beliefs are that the U.S. government should declare America a Christian nation, that U.S. laws should be based on Christian values, and if the U.S. moves away from our Christian foundations, we will not have a country anymore. And there's more, but those are some of the key ones that this poll, this study, zeroed in on. Oops. Another one is being Christian is an important part of being truly American, and God has called Christians to exercise dominion over all areas of American society. It's a growing belief, group, whatever you might call it.
Cool.
Yes. Now here's what they found. So who believes that kind of stuff? Adherents or people who really adhere to it, or who are sympathetic with it, sympathetic with Christian nationalism. Who are they? 64% of them are white evangelical Protestants. 52% are other Protestants of color, not white. 43% are Hispanic Protestants. Interesting. Again, this is adherents and sympathizers. Adherents are the smaller portion of the two. 38% are Latter-day Saints. 38% are Black Protestants. It's kind of interesting. Wow. It's a great, it just came out. I'd recommend you go to it because it's full of good information. And here's some more adherents or sympathizers of Christian nationalism. 35% of other Christians. Adherents. 33% of white mainline, 33% of white mainline Protestants are sympathizers or adherents. 30% of white Catholics are, this is their ethnic, I think, makeup. 23% of Hispanic Catholics are, and 11% of non-Christian religious, and 7% of Jewish are adherents or sympathizers. So the fewest, if you look at different religions, the Jewish religion, for example, has the smallest portion of adherents or sympathizers to Christian nationalism, and the largest is other Christians. Yeah. So this, I think, is a very dangerous trend. It's happening, within, since you are a group that's very interested in faith-based issues, I recommend that you go and take a closer look at this study just came out, because when you combine the power and the intensity of belief with politics, that's where you really get in trouble. That's where people will do anything. Democracy is not a top priority for them. They'll do anything to maintain their belief and impose it upon a civic society. So when I look out at our politics, I think this is one of the most dangerous trends, and it's very difficult to stop because you're dealing with very adamant, intense beliefs. And you're dealing with a society that's not putting a lot of emphasis on rational thinking or education, and you're dealing with a society that on top of that has anybody being able to put anything up on websites and people believing it, and this whole recipe, this cauldron of trends is all happening at one time, and it's going to be a pretty crazy next decade. So, in the meantime, I wish we had a Walter Cronkite to bring us all together. One person who everyone could agree on could be trusted. But alas, we are not in that era anymore. But it just means that building community like you're doing, interfaith, is so important. We have to talk to each other across our boundaries, across fences, across borders. And it's only by knowing each other that we feel comfortable, and when we feel comfortable and unthreatened, things stay calm and rational. So I commend you on what you're doing here. I look forward to the rest of the evening. I'm happy to answer whatever questions. And yeah, thank you for listening.